What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is a 1994 black comedy drama film that was written and directed by Quentin Tarantino and was first requested to me by Myat Thu Kyaw back on my The Last Jedi trailer review that I released back on the 14th of April. Okay, so Pulp Fiction takes place in the city of Los Angeles and follows an ensemble cast of characters that are all connected to each other in one way or another. The majority of the characters are connected to an underground crime ring, and their fates all coincide at various points in the film as their storylines intersect with one another. Their storylines intersect for a number of different reasons, but primarily because of some deals that go south and of course a lot of money in play. And the rest of the film is spent watching our characters live their crime-filled lives in Los Angeles as we watch multiple experiences and characters crash and coincide in crazy fashion. Alright, so Pulp Fiction was a film that I've received a lot of flack for not seeing. I think I've seen the vast majority of Tarantino's movies and I almost always love them, but Pulp Fiction was one that I always knew I needed to watch but never actually completed, because I do actually remember starting it a while back and then getting through most of it, but then I got sidetracked somehow, forgot about it, and never finished it. That was a while ago though. But this time I did finish Pulp Fiction and I have to say that I really enjoyed it. It honestly felt like a whole new watch for me because I didn't actually watch any of the scenes and think to myself, oh yeah, been there, done that. The only time that happened was with the iconic Samuel L. Jackson scene in the beginning, and that's probably because that's such an iconic scene in general that basically everyone has seen before, probably several times. I think as a whole though, Pulp Fiction is a great film because like all of Tarantino's work, it has such a distinct and unique identity that is instantly recognizable as Tarantino's work. He has a really unique way of making black comedy films that poke fun at subject matter that's generally never considered funny by the masses. I think that what Tarantino does in Pulp Fiction, and pretty much all his films really, is combine intense drama and violence with comedy, and mixing those ingredients successfully is very, very difficult to pull off. But Quentin Tarantino does it in a way that very few can. He has this really interesting way of taking that dark subject matter and somehow adding lightheartedness to it. I think he does this through the violence that can occasionally seem a bit cartoonish, but I think he primarily does it through his written dialogue. I feel like he's a master of writing dialogue because in every film he does, especially Pulp Fiction, there are a ton of memorable and quotable lines that'll stick with you after you finish watching the movie. I think part of what kept me so invested was how witty the conversations between the characters felt, because while there certainly is plenty of violence in this movie, it's primarily a drama that explores the personalities and motivations of the ensemble cast of characters, and in order to appropriately give these characters identity, they need to engage in quality conversations that lend some insight into why they're involved in this crime story to begin with. The conversations are not only funny, but they're also very, very witty. I think it's pretty rare that you watch a film and find yourself thinking, wow, that line of dialogue was super clever and creative, but that's what I found myself saying fairly often while watching Pulp Fiction. I think this is definitely one of the better written films from a dialogue perspective that I've watched in a while. Tarantino always has showed off his prowess as a writer, but I thought Pulp Fiction was especially great because of how each character's dialogue was written, specifically in a way that always paralleled their personality. But good writing doesn't mean a whole lot without good performances, but thankfully Pulp Fiction definitely checks that box off as well. The cast is loaded with great actors, and each of them delivers something really, really great in this film. I think what Pulp Fiction does with its characters is pretty remarkable because almost all of them are pretty terrible people in terms of not only what you see them do on screen, but also what they tell you about themselves. But despite that, you still find a way to get invested in their stories and occasionally root for them despite their many flaws. I think that's in part due to just how well acted and how humorous they are. There's a charm and likability factor with most of these characters, and I think that really helps keep you invested in their stories despite the terrible things they do. It's a pretty interesting case study to me because while they are terrible people for the most part, they do and say funny things, and I think that will have most people looking past the acts of violence and enjoying the silliness of it all because it's fairly comical. Tarantino does this in seemingly every film, but the violence, the dialogue, and the way the actors perform add up to something irresistibly fun. I think that he has such a distinctive style that you kind of know what to expect with his films before you even watch them. Each one is slightly different and balances the formula a little bit differently, but I think what makes his films so great is how he manages to shift the formula in favor of whatever he needs for each specific scene. Pulp Fiction does a really great job with tonal shifts, sometimes even in the same scene. They can go from really hilarious comedy to really dark and twisted subject matter very quickly. For most films, this would be a huge problem because you're essentially sending the audience on a roller coaster ride of emotions and not always giving them the necessary time to recover. But the way that Pulp Fiction transitions from tone to tone is so fluid and seamless that you don't consciously notice the abrupt changes. There's really only one thing I didn't love about this movie, and I'm probably going to catch some flack for it, but either way, I felt that the construction of the story itself felt a bit confusing and unnecessary. unnecessary, the arrangement of the story rather. I understand that Quentin Tarantino had a very specific vision in mind, and that was to make this a non-linear film. This story is told in a way that feels and actually is out of order. It's not sequential by any means, and I think for me personally that felt a little anticlimactic. Because there's a point where everything feels resolved and like the movie is about to end, and then you jump back to moments that took place not long after events you already saw unfold on screen. Those events are still before what you've already seen from other characters though, and while it helps all the stories intersect a bit better, it felt anticlimactic for me personally. But overall, I really enjoyed Pulp Fiction. I think it's definitely one of Tarantino's best films. I thought it had very well written dialogue, great acting from a spectacular cast, a hilarious brand of comedy, and fluid tonal shifts. My only con for this film is the non-linear construction. Regardless, I'm going to give Pulp Fiction a 9 out of 10 and definitely recommend you check this one out if you haven't already and you enjoy Quentin Tarantino's work. It's on Netflix for all interested. So have you guys seen Pulp Fiction yet? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know why not. And also let me know your favorite Tarantino film. Mine would probably be Django. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next video.